I'd like to welcome everyone to today's episode of Truth, the reality under the headline. And today we have the guest on, Christopher Hoyer again. We're going through his book, When That Day Comes, Training for the Fight. Today we're going to discuss, a heavy topic for any first responder. Is burying a brother. And Chris is going to discuss with us, the first time that, a fallen brother, he had to actually attend the funeral, the effects it played on him, the realization that it set in that, hey, this is my life. I'm a part of this. And, a lot of things it's taken for granted, but, in paying the respects to that aspect where, as long as we can absorb and adapt that. And again, it kind of goes into, why Chris published his book in the first place to kind of, heighten everyone's awareness in regard to, outside of, what we're given in basic and everything else too in the academy, that we can take extra steps that, sometimes protocol really doesn't guide us in. So we'll be reviewing that today. I implore individuals that you have the link available, that you join the show, ask questions, become engaged. That's the whole purpose behind everything that we do, is to, get everyone the voice of the people, because ultimately, everyone at home right now, you are the ones that they serve this duty for, you, I, and everyone around, and their own families. And, we're also going to have other guests on too. And, it's one of my favorite co-hosts here, Chris Gregorio. Chris, how you doing tonight?
What's up, brother? How are you? Thank you for having me back.
Always. It's always a pleasure. It's you can never get tired of good knowledge.
Indeed, that's why I always come back. You always have such great content and vulnerable and open and honest conversations with folks. And I absolutely love the courage that people have to come out and talk about their traumas and their stresses that they deal with. In fact, there's a hero of mine right here
Yes.
who's so open and honest and vulnerable and courageous to talk about, what most of us societally, especially within this profession, think of as kind of taboo about talking about your feelings and how you might be traumatized and damaged in some sort of way. I used to say broke, but I don't think none of us are really broke because we're still functional. So we're at least cracked. We're trying to keep those cracks down, and I think talking about it with fantastic people like my brother Hoyer here help keep those cracks down. What's up, brother?
What's going on? Welcome, welcome.
I know one thing there, Officer Hoyer, that in order to train for the fight, man, one thing we can't be in this life, man, and that's late, bro.
I know.
No,
Michael, have you never met Christopher Hoyer?
yeah, it's he's timely most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah.
Cutting on the edge. There she. Hey, tell her to get on her computer. We don't need just to hear her background there. Tell her to go ahead and jump on that computer. She's got the link.
You got the link? Come on.
I hear her popping that whip.
Oh yeah, every chance she gets, man.
So how'd the day treat you, Mr. Hoyer?
Oh my God, it was good. I'm not a corporate guy. I'm learning. I don't understand that world very well, and trying to navigate through some things that just, I don't need 3 or 4 levels of stuff that's going to bring me right back to where I started from. I could just do it straight from here. Why do I need to go all through all this other bullshit? It's very, very frustrating for me. And I was clearly never a Marine, and I don't understand how those guys operate either, because I'm not on the side of get it done now. I don't care what it takes. You got this much time to do it. Okay, well, it doesn't work that way for me. So
improvise, adapt, overcome.
Well, I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, I was tasked with doing some scheduling stuff, and instead of trying to, create a whole brand new Excel sheet while I'm doing this, I just wrote the shit on a pad of paper. And my good buddy of mine, he's a really good dude. He's looking at me like he's completely confused. Like, why would you be writing that shit down instead of, well, if I write it down, I don't have to do anything else. All I got to do is write it and put a check mark next to it when I'm done with it.
How do you think I wrote a book, motherfucker?
Oh, my God. But he's, and God bless him, he's a good dude. I love him to death, but he's one of those guys that's so smart that he can't not be technically advanced, And for
Chris
me,
Russell's
I'm
good.
just not that guy, It just doesn't work for me. So,
And again, going back to us recognizing certain aspects of ourself, our character, our learning curves, and everything else like that, and it goes back into what we've spoken about so many times over, to where it's the test taking abilities and things like that, to where, hey, look, this is what I'm cut out for,
yeah,
not the reports. So
yeah, I'm good at chasing bad guys and doing all that fun stuff, but cleaning them, well, we're not talking about that. So
yeah, so we gotta get Nat on board too, because once this website and all the different promotions of your agency and all the different trainings and things like that, she's gonna have to be that admin role, since you don't like to Excel spreadsheets and scheduling.
I know she's a genius for that stuff, but on some level, unfortunately, now she got her own stuff going on, and like, well, shit, I'm being put on the back burner, but whatever. So I'm saying that because she's gonna not defend herself because she's sitting right in front of me, but I'm just gonna keep talking smack till something gets thrown across the room. So,
like Chris said, she's got that whip back there.
Oh, she does, man. Oh yeah.
But it is a blessing though that we got old Mr. Gregorio back here, old Sarge back here.
Dude, I love it, man. I know it's been a while, dude. How you doing, by the way? I'm talking all about me, so.
Brother, I'm doing fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Just doing a lot of peer support stuff. Doing a lot of helping our warriors, man, and just talking and actually mostly listening. But David Perez said it best. It's funny how much you can put people to ease with just saying "me too."
Yeah.
You know what? I'm fucked up too. I cry sometimes too for no reason. I sometimes get mad for no reason. And when you recognize that you're not alone, that you're not some alien on an island all by yourself, and that you're all this weird stuff, and that there's a lot of us out there, man, you could almost see like pull off a 10-pound weight off of somebody's shoulders after you say that, and they just take this breath, and there's this look in their eyes, almost like relief, like, oh my God. And some people, you tell them that, and they start crying a little bit just because they're relieved that they're not weird. It's not just them. So it's been very fulfilling, and unfortunately, I'll say that it's been way too busy.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, clearly they need you, so that's a good thing, right? So
that's why we talk to each other. That's why we have such tight friendships and the groups that we have, because the more we talk about stuff, the less pressure there is that builds up to where bad things happen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
On top of that too, though, it's Mr. Hoyer, you and I both know that we've had several conversations, and Mr. G right there too. I know that he had in our very first podcast together, talking about fate and how there's an order of things, right? And it's talking about this here, especially with tonight's chapter, burying a brother. So a couple of the other officers and retired that was asking to join. They just got done attending today. The chief's brother's funeral and things like that, and another one has one that's in a bad way, and it's just I almost said it's funny, but coincidental, and just how things pan out and the order of life sometimes, to where here tonight's episode, and that's why a couple of them didn't want to join, because of the different triggers and the flashbacks that it presents, when especially they're going through it today. And like yesterday, so, and like, Mr. Gregorio, Officer Gregorio always says too about the, sometimes we got to talk about it though,
I couldn't agree more, man. And it's, so the guys, I didn't hear about it because I've been clearly just crazy busy, but who's the officer? Who's the chief's brother?
Well, Sergeant Hall, the one that's normally on here with us. He's listening right now. That's what he just texted me and stuff like that, saying that, he just can't, he really don't want to do it. So he's listening right now, but he just can't make it on. It was his chief. No, is the chief's dad's funeral.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
And he was actually the pallbearer. So, Prayers for both families on each side of that and stuff too. So,
well, hey, what do you guys think about dedicating our show to him tonight? What do you guys think?
it's perfect.
Fantastic. And I know I'm going to steal this from Chris because he always does this. But let me tell our brother, Mr. Hall, there that you're not alone, brother. We're thinking of you. We love you, and we're praying for you. And maybe we just take about 10 seconds of silence for the man's father.
Amen, man. Let's do it.
God bless him.
God bless.
Good call, bro. Good call.
You know, and I'm glad you just did that. And because it's like one of them things as well too, to where, and Chris touches on it like phenomenally, if that's a word. But in this chapter where it talks about that feeling that you obtained, knowing that you're a part of something, and when experiencing something like that. I mean, there's going to be officers that don't experience a fallen brother or sister, during the course of their career, but if they seek it out, they'll find one. But that Karam-shit and how it just brings individuals together and things like that and makes it a part of something where it's that family. We all feel it and we all go through it and things like that. So,
yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, no questions asked. I mean, even with just all the stuff you go through just to get where you are, and then something I don't even try to think about. I mean, how easily could that have been me, or my best friend or something like that, And I was fortunate on this one that I didn't know the guy. Mark Atkinson, really good guy from what I'm being told. I think if had I known him that early on in my career, that would have maybe changed my trajectory a little bit. You know what I mean? The way it all happened, very, very extremely similar to mine, and one of these guys that shows up to work one day just doesn't go home. I mean, how do you process through that? I mean, or can you even? So,
and you don't even have to know someone to do that, because again, going back to the aspect of being a part of the family, it's I mean, how many of our own like blood relatives are so distant that it's almost out of sight, out of mind to us, and all of a sudden it's we got a funeral for Jim Bob over here, and it's like, oh yeah, hey, I ain't seen old Jim Bob in 30 years, or I didn't even meet him. But it's the same sense as that family aspect of it that just kind of hits home and touches, especially when you're serving in that same capacity.
Yeah, it's true. We're all on the same team, clearly, So,
well, it's the now people can go out there and relax, smoking some crack. Now that they're handing crack pipes out to everybody.
Oh my God! I don't even want to know. Didn't hear that. I don't even want to know, man.
No, I mean, the Biden administration is they just spent billions to hand out crack pipes to addicts because it thinks that it'll lessen different things like that. And it's like. Law enforcement has it bad enough today. Now they're encouraging drug addicts. It's insane.
There's absolute no reasoning that could possibly make sense. So
Hunter must have inspired it.
Oh my God! Wow.
No, but
I'm gonna pivot that back real quick to this career, and I think that this is one of those moments that we can reflect on, where we say how special this career is. As you kind of brushed over a little bit, Michael, about Jim Bob promoter. I haven't seen him in 30 years, and there can be a chuckle, but this is one thing where I could go to somebody's funeral that's another cop or even firefighter, never meet the man or the woman, but I am so emotionally broken by the end of these funerals because they were so selfless in what they did, and there's no other type of career field as first responders. So, that's kind of a broad umbrella there. But as first responders, there's no other career field that I think that you get that same thing. You don't go to another Microsoft employee's funeral that you never met, or Costco, or any corporate, you name the company, to where you go to their funeral, never met them, that it's going to have an emotional impact on you like that. But that's how special this line of work is.
Yeah, I've got a new story that I'm not sure. I've lost track of where they all are, but I kind of mentioned that I know I'm like a flake, but whatever. That's what happens when you retire, though. But I mentioned that where you have a special bond with people when you walk up on a car, knowing that you got to put your life on the line and have your buddy put his life on the line for you as well. and you're going through a door or something like that, it might be the last time you ever do that. And to look into somebody's eyes right before you do that is, for me, is exceptionally impactful. And then when you come out of that whole thing alive, especially when it's a planned event, when it's an unplanned event, you're just kind of caught off guard. You're like, holy shit, what just happened? But when you're going in, and you're thinking about stuff and you overthink like we do sometimes, that just makes such a big difference. So,
Well, to piggyback off of that, it's also when we, do the self-blaming aspect of it. Let's just say that somebody else put their, life on the line, and where it could have been me, but it ended up being them. And that's where it plays that large role. What you just said.
Survivor's guilt.
Exactly. And it's a shame.
I'm an expert on that topic, so I'm sure we'll get to that at some point in time. And I know, Chris, same thing, man, with your critical incident. And then your buddy that lost a dog up there where you're at. I mean, I know those are, whether you give a shit about some shitbag that you had to take a life for, that's still the loss of human life, and you still got to process through that whole thing. And that's no easy task, regardless.
100%. 100%.
And then, so how are things going are you guys still, Chris, are you guys still kind of working the long hours and having to cover double?
Yeah, I would say yes, not in the same fashion as it was, but just because of such low staffing levels. And I'm not going to go into the level of staffing and all that stuff because it would probably give away where I'm at. But it's a critical staffing, and because of that, people are pulling. It's not mandatory, but people are having an opportunity to, I guess you can say, make a lot of extra money because we're not meeting our minimum safe staffing levels.
See, and like knowing I was going to have this show tonight is when I read the news article to where it just happened, where it's the just the verbiage on it, that the administration will provide grant funding to pay for the distribution of safe smoking kits. That's how they soften it. Safe smoking kits as part of efforts to reduce harm from substance abuse over the next 3 years. How is encouraging people to do dope? Eliminating the harm of substance abuse. And on top of that, they want to spend the billions on shit like this, and it's making the jobs of our law enforcement and first responders, let alone like the EMTs having to give the, Narcan. There we go. Thank you. And things like that, to where it's the, then they don't want to spend the funding. Everything's so underfunded, understaffed. They don't want to spend the money on what's really making a difference, and that's those in the field. Officer Gregorio in the field. That's what's making the difference. It isn't because somebody has a clean crack pipe that all of a sudden the streets are safer. It's backwards work, and I could go on for days about this. It's just disgusting, especially on today's topic.
I think what they're forgetting too is what happens when those guys get high. That's when all the crime starts occurring.
That's what I'm getting at.
And one of the classes I teach is about excited delirium. And that's one of the most dangerous things that we're ever going to face, in real life. And you get this guy that starts overdosing on whatever he's smoking, and all of a sudden he's got this excited delirium thing going on, and it never turns out good ever.
Well, it's moments like that as well too, to where, any of our tactical gear becomes ineffective. You try to use a taser on somebody that's on PCP, meth, or anything else like that. It's rendered useless. On top of that, it isn't even just the individuals that are high, but what about the ones that are coming off of their high? They have no more money in their pocket, and they need to, chase that next high. And all of a sudden, the crime rates go up because they're out there, doing the robberies and things. It's disgusting, and especially going into today's topic, it's bad enough that, our officers nationwide are, risking their lives every day that they get up and they, put their uniform on and, click the badge on, that now they have to worry about things like this as well, too. We're already walking on our toes every time we hit the streets, and it's just.
Well, my question is, what's in that kit to start with? And for the guys that I had still a really close buddy of mine that owned a liquor store down in my old area, and he used to sell, he called them oil burners. but they're freaking crack pipes, with little, mini roses inside of them.
Yeah, little glass roses.
Yeah, and I told him straight up, I go, dude, you're contributing to the problem. He goes, no, man, that's not what they're for. I go, man, come on, you know what? Don't bullshit me. I said, I'm just going to say it straight up. I said, shame on you for advocating this bullshit for everything that's going on around here. So for those guys that are contributing to that, to make money off it, shame on them too, man. That's bullshit.
Can I take, for the sake of resiliency and mindset, can I take a different crack at this, pun kind of intended?
Please.
Of course. We got to take a crack at it.
I
like that.
We as cops really get worked up around the axles over some of this stuff. And it can be frustrating. But there's one thing that the military taught me. And this is how I stay sane and happy and resilient and still love going to work despite all the decisions and political decisions and topics that we get on sometimes, is that I don't get to make the rules. I just got to follow them and enforce whatever laws they tell me are the laws or not. When I was in Afghanistan, the rules of engagement in a 9-month period probably changed 7 times. We bitched about it a bit. We'd get angry. Because every time, at least from our perspective, every time the rules of engagement changed, it was to make us less safe. Not looking at it from the 30,000-foot view that the leaders were looking at it through.
Exactly.
And that we went out and we operated in the way that we had to operate, otherwise we'd end up in Leavenworth. And, I have no, at least at this point in my career, I have no seat at the table to have any influence or impact on those decisions, whether they're made for public health, safety, or political, whatever. I don't even have a seat at that table. So I choose, for my own sanity, emotional health, mental health, to not really focus on those things and say, okay, you're going to do that stuff. Okay, it means maybe we get more crack arrests or whatever else. Try to find the positive stuff that's going to come out of that, and maybe we get less stressed out and work over the axles about that stuff. Not to say that I agree or disagree whether it's right or wrong, but for our own mental health, if I can wrap my head around some of the positive things or discount it at all, because it's not my decision, I have no control over it, maybe I'm a little more at peace with myself and not in so much conflict.
Yes, sir. That's just like some
cities.
cities.
On that. So 2 things, Chris. For one, looks like you're a shooting star. All those lights driving by, I love it. I'm kind of digging that. And I gotta compare you to Natalie, and I'm gonna make fun of both of you guys. So you guys all know her and I caught the COVID, I don't know, a couple of months ago or something. And she actually made the comment. She's like, "The COVID's one of the best things that ever happened to me." I'm like, "What is wrong with you?" So she ended up losing a bunch of weight and then quit drinking Coke.
She couldn't taste it.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, what is wrong with you people, man? So Chris, you're like, oh yeah, no, it's actually a good thing because we might get us out of it or whatever else. And I just love that you guys do that. And sometimes I got to remember to do that too because I don't. I'm just guilty of that. But so I had to. You're pointing. So.
Let me piggyback on that, Chris. How did we meet? What was the reason that we met?
Out of a tragedy.
Because of COVID.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Right? Not because we got it, but because it shut the country down and this new thing called Zoom popped up and this beautiful, fantastic lady named Sarah Carell started this thing called Power of Our Story, right? That never would have happened without COVID.
You're right. You're right.
I actually have that picture of the big Zoom screen that the both of you were on and everybody else.
Oh, yeah. And how can you argue with that? I mean, it's like, yeah, what am I going to do? So
now it's a shitty thing, and as humans, we always focus on the shit and the ugly and the bad. Yeah. It's a conscious, deliberate decision to focus on the positive stuff. Just like in things that we've experienced, mostly not all reactionary, we've taken conscious, deliberate decisions to do the things that we've done for the betterment of society and ourselves and our partners.
100%.
You know what's even better than all that? Just that we've got guys like you out there that can remind us of that, because we all know it. How much do we practice it and how much do we forget it? And then you come along and you remind us of that. So that's huge, man. So
I love you.
And it isn't even just a verbal reminder. It's the action, actually being the living example of it. But the craziest shit is the fact that the same individuals that are going into the voters polls and are affecting the funding, the careers and things like that of the first responders. It's the educational aspect of that, and then you look at the other side of it to where people really don't know what's going on or how it's going to affect the community, their families, or anything else as a whole. We don't see to where officers have the opportunity to advocate for any type of bill that's being passed, or advocate before the voter polls are open and things like that. There might be commercials and things like that, but how many of us officers get to go out there in the communities and advocate and actually educate the community? And that's why, like, during our first broadcast, Officer Gregorio, Sergeant Gregorio, brought it up about the just stopping in the community to say hi, checking on the business owners and things like that every now and then, to where it enhances and it increases the morale of the community as a whole, and it puts that different perspective, that different light, that different perception on how the civilian sector views law enforcement.
And not just that, we have nothing but, most people never call us on their good days, right? We always see people on their worst days. So when you go do those things, guess what that's also doing? That's allowing us to see humans normal, that it's not their bad day, so you don't get so jaded, and you can still try to have a positive mindset on a daily basis and not get bogged into somebody else's demons.
100%.
Yeah.
And then how much of now, even with that being said, because of the different, I'm not going to say dissension, in different agencies. So like Chris, Christopher, when you first started out, hearing the different remarks and things like that about, hey, being a rookie and things like that. It's little things like that though as well too. When somebody's about to go set on their day, that kind of puts that setback. You're already having to take the calls of the worst, but then when you have interdepartmental actually making some of the comments making you feel uncomfortable, it's a whole mind screw to where you gotta keep that basket flushed, as you always say, Chris.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is a whole mindset thing. I mean, when you're young, when you get on and you don't know anything, and all you're interested in is learning the job and chasing bad guys and figuring out why you're there, kind of a thing. I think it's less impactful. At least it was for me. There were a few times when I had guys I had one guy in particular that had about 3 months on me, and he thought he was king shit, and he was a bully, straight up a bully, and he thought he could push me around and stuff, and I'm going, dude, we're on the same team, bro. I mean, we're on the same badge. Okay, you got 3 months on me, and whatever. Okay, so you made it off FTO, a week before I did, or whatever else, So, over time, I started to just kind of dismiss that kind of stuff and focus my efforts on the bad guys. And then there was a point in time where, I started getting some negative feedback from the internal side. And I realized that, really it was less directed at me and just directed at, just in general. If that makes sense. You know what I mean? It's like, we're paid to be the pincushion or the shoulder or the punching bag at any given point. But sometimes as officers, we come back and we don't have that opportunity to feed that back to the real world. So we've got to do it internally, And I don't think it's necessarily a personal thing. It's just one of those things where guys get to that point where they're like, man, I gotta blow off some steam, and you just happen to be sitting right next to me, so you're gonna be the one to get it. So it's like, okay, well, all right, I'll take it on board. So
yeah, so hey Chris, so we know that Christopher was a shit magnet from the very beginning, but how far into your service was it before you actually experienced? I don't want to say that the real life, but instances doesn't necessarily have to be like a fallen brother or a sister, but experience that tragedy to where because a lot of times we feel immune to things because we haven't been exposed to it, experienced it ourselves. But how far in did you experience whether it be a call or another fellow brother or sister taking a call that kind of just put it into perspective into, oh shit, this is real life, this happens?
Yeah, that made it real. I had actually two instances in my first 2 months. One was one of our divers, Jackson Lone, that fell off one of our boats and died. And then another one was one of our canine guys at the time, and some other guys that were friends of mine, turned out to be friends of mine later, were in a hostage situation where a man had a knife to his kid's neck. They're in a standoff in this living room about 10 feet away from the guy, and the guy starts praying, and you know what's about to happen next, and they were forced to save that little baby's life. So my entire career has been that. But frankly, I knew what it was before I got hired. Doing a tour in Kosovo in '99 at the beginning of that, and then being in Afghanistan from April to December of 2002. I knew what the world was. I knew that evil existed, and I knew that evil existed, and there's bad people out there that want to do bad things. So I for me, I feel that God put me here to be a barrier in some sort of a way for folks. I was lucky enough to be born on this soil as an American, and I feel I have to earn that every single day. I don't take that for granted. I'm not owed that. I don't deserve it. I'm lucky to have been born here, and I promise you, to my dying breath, I'll earn it to the best of my ability. And I feel the same way about my law enforcement career. It's a privilege to have this job, this career field, the ability to serve others, in whatever capacity that means, on a day-to-day basis. But today's good job earned me an opportunity to earn tomorrow or the next day, once I put that uniform back on tomorrow. And I hold that stuff dear to my heart, wholeheartedly.
And then now, Christopher, so it's the title of your book is fucking genius, but so especially with today's topic, I know a lot of brothers and sisters that it hits them harder because, like, when we sign our names on the dotted line, as sort of Gregorio says so often about, we're deciding to put ourselves before anybody else, but so we know that those tragedies are possible to happen. So if, when we see a fallen brother or sister, by gunfire, by, responding to a call, it's kind of it hurts and it may impact you. But then when we see that somebody was just responding to a call and it was like a traffic accident or, something else happened outside of real, I mean, I don't want to say it like that because then fucking people get insulted, but like real duty as far as, responding to the calls. I mean, how much so Christopher, so like today's story, for example, you not knowing the guy and things like that, to where, do you think it affects you on the same level as far as making it real, opposed to something happening to where, oh yeah, hey, that's something that's expected because that's part of this career, this service?
I think it's circumstantial, because I know that when Mark was killed, it didn't really affect me a whole lot till the funeral. And then, of course, when we read that story, talk all about that. But then about 6 or 7 months later, we had another officer killed, the guy that I graduated academy with, within the same time frame, pretty much. And that one affected me in a whole different way because I was actually on the scene when they pulled his body out, and that's one of those things I'll never be able to get out of my brain ever. This was 1999, I've gone back to Mark's scene multiple times, dozens and dozens of times. And I still feel that love and that loss. But I can only visualize what it actually was. When I went to Buff's scene, whole nother area.
Bless you.
Especially that when I was up there on that scene, I actually saw what happened. So when I went back to visit his particular scene, I had a whole different perspective on it. So for me, it was kind of one side of the fence to the other. You know what I mean? So um,
how often do you do that? Because I mean, I know you do it for Dave, obviously, as far as going back to the scene of.
when I was on duty, unfortunately, where I worked down in Maryville, we had a lot down there. So every time I would be just in that area, I would make a purpose effort to just drive by. I'd always just stop, say a quick prayer, whatever else, if I could. Um, but I never made it a point to like go across town, just to go, you know, be by the side of the road or wherever it happened to be, kind of a thing. Now with Dave's situation, that's completely different. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you guys saw Nat's post on that or not, but we're just in Arizona last weekend. Really weird. I mean, this kind of stuff happens, as you know, to us all the time, which I just absolutely love. Um, so we're driving. She's on the phone. And we're trying to figure out what our time frame is. We got to go drop off this table, and she's like, "Is it really going to take us that long to get there?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, because we're going over to Dave's
Oh,
gravesite. You know."
did you find somebody for the table and chairs?
We did, yes, yes.
Awesome.
Miraculously, yeah, we did. So luckily, I drove my truck all the way out there just for that. So, and a couch, but we pull into the gravesite, and it's really cold that particular day. Kind of breezy, and usually we go up there. We try to make a conscious effort to bring something with us, whatever it is, a patch or painted rock or a note or whatever it happens to be. For whatever reason, we had nothing on board that day, and so we're standing there. We brushed off because it was really windy earlier in the day. It had slowed down a little bit, but there was lots of debris over his stone there. So we wiped that all off, not really paying the least bit of attention. And Nat brings it up. She's like, "Oh man, we didn't bring anything with us to place on his site." And right at her feet, right on Dave's gravesite, was a little blue heart. It's almost like jeans material, little blue heart laying right there on the ground. And I'm like, dude, I mean, how on earth? And it was clearly it had blown across the field and landed right there. I mean, that's another one of those stories where you're like, you can't make this shit up, man. You just can't, I mean, and why would it land right there where we were at that particular time? It's just
That's like the last time where you guys went out to his the scene.
The scene, yeah.
And it kind of just and the wind's blowing. It was just sitting sitting there peacefully, and her walking down the beach and talking about mom and stuff like that. It's just it's you can think things in existence. A lot of times things are happening in our lives, but we're not open or we're not paying attention to those things, and that just shows the mindset that you have as far as the being cognizant of the realities of everything else too. So
yeah, and unfortunately it took a tragic event for that to become the norm for me, and now that Natalie and I are so close and in ties with these kinds of things, we see them all the time, and we don't take it for granted. We don't just blow it off like it's no big deal. We take it on board and we recognize what it is, and we talk about it. We know everything else, and we'd love to share it too, because I mean, we want people to realize that, man, these things happen all around us all the time. But if you're just gonna live in your own little shell and not pay attention to it, it's like, okay, well, but if you do, I mean, it makes the world just that much of a more of a place where you want to be. You know what I mean? So
100%. Because it was yesterday, might have been a couple of days ago, but because I always do my different posts and things like that, talking about certain things, and one of the things I spoke about was when somebody tells you to forgive and forget, or somebody tells you just to forget something, to where it's actually crippling your mind, to where I mean, we don't want to let it like bog us down and beat us down, but we should never forget tragedies and things like that happens, because it's what keeps us alert. Again, like kind of going back to this book right here, it's the sometimes the fallibilities are going to hit us and things like that, but how are we going to be able to grow beyond that point and become that heightened individual because that happened to us? So
well, another thing is, I mean, I didn't want to be that guy for a long time. I was like, no, this bullshit should have never happened. Chris already mentioned the survivor's guilt. I mean, all those kinds of things are weighing on your mind. clearly, again, every circumstance can be a little bit different. And when you've got so many in one sitting, if you will, trying to process through all that stuff, and you don't take it on board, you're not accepting it. You're like, no, 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 no. And then when you finally recognize that, like in my case, there's nothing I could do to change it. There just wasn't. You start looking at the positive side of things and realizing that, man, it's still a tragedy. Yeah, I wish it never had happened. I wish that he was still here, but I can't change it. And now I've got to either do what I did for 2 years almost and dwell on it and fall down crying left and right, or I can take it on board and realize that, man, there's lots of good things that came from this whole thing, which I hate. I'd hate it, but I gotta look at it from that aspect. So
yeah, but a lot of the people that don't know, I mean, you had a special circumstance in that aspect as well too, to where yes, you were grieving, but then it was just like the moments that you're trying to work it over, and then all of a sudden your superior is talking about the fuck, it's been a year, you should be over by now. Then all of a sudden, bam, another tragedy, another critical incident happens, and it was just, I can't even imagine. So many others, can't imagine, and things like that. That when you're trying to, deal with one and cope with one, getting smacked with another one as well too, and actually, and that's what I love about the conversations that we have. And I know Sergeant Gregorio always says it as well too, to where we have to talk about these things, but it's the when you have that lashback and the unacceptance to make it feel like we're wrong because we're dealing with it a certain way, or we actually have feelings that we're human beings. That's discouraging when we're still going out there and during the good fight, and I can't even imagine like your mind already dealing with that, people telling you, oh, you could just deal with it, all of a sudden, hey, here's another one, by the way, you thought that was bad, hey, let's stack this on top. So
and these are, and then honestly, a lot of times it's really no fault of theirs because they haven't really been through it directly. They supervise, or they may be peers. They may not be peer support, but they just may be a peer. You know what I mean? And sometimes they just don't recognize that it's virtually impossible to move forward for whatever your personal list of reasons are. And they're on the side of but, and you're going on the same side, but you don't realize either on my side what I argue the point of like body cameras. Well, the body cameras are great and they do a lot of great things for us, but you still can't put yourself back in the mind of that officer, what he saw, smelled, or heard at that particular time. You can look at the video and say, yes, this is what it looks like, but all this time you've got to process through looking at that video going, well, you should have done this, should have done this, should have done this. Well, that's all great for you sitting on the sidelines 4 months later. But in that point, too, the second I had to make that decision, that's a whole nother situation. And I've got to live with it now. I've got to figure out how I'm going to process through it. When you're sitting on the sidelines kind of doing this, like, hey, we got radio calls. We got this, we got this, we got this. Yeah, no, you know what, dude? Life goes on. Radio calls are going to come. Don't worry about it. They're going to be there. So I'm getting off on a tangent. Sorry.
Mike, that's good to hear. Officer Zanito, welcome.
What's going on? How are you, Mike?
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, sorry I'm late. Sorry.
Oh, it's
that'll go in your notes, man. Don't worry about it.
It's the guest star was a tad late himself, but
don't listen to this guy, man.
But
Nice.
I really am glad that you joined. I mean, especially the importance of this chapter, the burying a brother and things like that. And now that you're on here, to kind of piggyback off the discussions that we've been having up until this point, because I know that you were also a medic, in military and stuff like that as well too, and even coming out being EMT. And Christopher and I were talking about how, when his partner was killed and how, he was going through his grieving processes and things like that. And then, the superior saying, oh, hey, you should be over this. And then he got hit with another critical incident, like back to back, basically, but in your service and what you were doing, especially in, being medic, EMT, how much of, and I don't want to say survivor's guilt, like you dealing with certain things, but how much of you should have done more or you could have done more, did you face, through your career and things like that, to where does anything like that ever affect you, based on the lashback that you receive from others, saying or thinking that, officers, you could have done more, things like that?
I mean, it's human nature that if there's a bad outcome on something that you go to, whether it's responding as a medic, an EMT, combat medic, a police officer, if something negative is the outcome of it, you're always going to think to yourself, if I would have made that right turn instead of going the shortcut and the alley was blocked, or I got a flat tire, and if I would have checked my tires, you could have, would have, could have, should have. But I mean, it's human nature to beat yourself up about that stuff. It's also one of those things where things happen when you can't be there, and even if you get there in time, it's still going to happen. It's still going to have that outcome. So I mean, we kind of just have to find a way to understand. I mean, you talked about survivor's guilt. I personally suffer from survivor's guilt just from being a Gulf War veteran. That's probably one of my biggest struggles, because I've talked about this before, is I think that had we taken care of the problem back in 1990 and 91, 9/11 wouldn't have happened. The Iraq-Afghanistan war wouldn't have happened. And again, that's my personal thing. And I have some other guys that I've served with that we've had discussions about this. But again, we can't control that. We can't control the narrative. As far as specific stuff that's kind of gone that way, has been basically like Chris kind of touched on it a little bit. Is there's some things, certain things that are going to happen that are way outside of your control, whether you have resources or not. And if you're there by yourself, we're our own worst enemy when it comes to stuff like that. I mean, we're gonna woulda, shoulda, coulda all day long. We're only trained to do certain things, but then we go through, for police officers, we go through the academy, then we go to FTO training, then we go, do our probation stuff, and we only learn tidbits of stuff outside of the academy and training, and we take a piece of each one of those training officers, and then we mold ourselves into the officer that we are today, and as we go through our careers. But again, there's going to be things that are going to happen, especially, I mean, in this day and age. I retired in 2012, and in this day and age, the cops that are coming out now, honestly, I don't think that they're supported. They're not trained. I mean, they're not getting the quality that they should, and the quality of training that they do, and that's a hindrance for what we're talking about. I mean, it's very damaging, especially if you can't prepare for it. One of the things that really needs to be looked at is preparation training for that critical incident that's going to happen in your career, whether you do 5 years or 25 years. There you go, when that day comes. And I did get that book on Amazon, and I started reading it. It's a rough start. I'll be honest. I struggled a little bit when I got into it, but I'm going to finish it. It may take me a damn year, but I'm going to finish it.
You own it now, man. Take your time. No worries.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's some good stuff, and it takes a lot of courage to write that kind of stuff. I mean, everybody tells me, the stuff that I've seen and done. I'm very humbled today about that I've seen so much and been through so much and survived it. And I just my whole thing is I want to tell my story, but I want to tell my story in person. I could put it down on paper. I could sit down and write a book, but I don't want to do that. That's not me. I want to do, by going out and talking about, telling my story and talking about the things that I've seen, and let people know that it's okay to not be okay.
That's huge, man. That's huge. So.
I'm 56 years old. I've been in combat. I'm 30 years as a nurse. I've had my EMT and paramedic off and on for the last 30 years. And I'm a retired police officer and a SWAT medic. So, I mean, I've seen a lot of
hell of
stuff,
a resume.
but I'm not superhuman. I'm still freaking human. I still bleed. Yeah, I bleed blue. That's the sarcasm of it. But I mean, I still bleed, but I cry, I have emotions. I'm a grown man, father of 4 kids, you know, and
That'll make you cry itself.
it's just, yeah, yeah. And my youngest is a daughter, so that's why I lose all my hair.
Oh boy.
But yeah, so it's one of those things where, you know, we just need to get the word out and let people know that it is okay to not be okay. You're not the tough guy all the time. You can't be the tough girl all the time. You can't be the problem solver every single time. You're not going to save everybody. One of the things that with my nonprofit that I do is my motto is never stops even when you come home. If you think about that from the police standpoint, you know, we never turn it off. We're at, you know, Carl's Jr. sitting at a restaurant. We got our back towards the wall. You know, we got our face towards the door. We're hyper vigilant. We're in a movie theater. We're sitting up on the top. You know, we know where the exits are, all that kind of stuff. We carry our guns and that. Military, same thing, hyper vigilant. They're always aware of their surroundings, that kind of stuff. But we never turn it off. A paramedic's driving to a pizza party or a birthday party, and he sees an accident. He's going to have that. He or she's going to have that split second thing. Do I stop? If I stop, I'm going to miss the birthday party. But we don't turn it off. We still and then we drive down the street. It's like, oh, I didn't stop. But what if that person dies? Or if they hear about the accident on the news and how bad it was, and there was a kid trapped in the car, and now you got guilt that you didn't stop. So it never turns off, even after retirement. I mean, I've been retired coming on 10 years this October, and I still don't turn it off. I mean, I still do it today. Still sit with my, you know, self facing that door, and you know, I still carry every day, everywhere I go. I live in Texas now. I live in America, so I moved out of Southern California.
I know, right?
So you know, I'm pretty stoked about that. But I mean, it's just the stuff that's going on today. It's like it's hard to turn it off. It's hard to just be retired and just, you know, be Mike Zanito. I can't do that anymore. It's just not.
Well, tell you what, man, Natalie, she made it really clear to me last year, sometime the year before, when you know, she made a comment about me never taking off my uniform. You know, she goes, I mean, in all reality, yeah, you're retired, coming up on 4 years, but have you ever taken it off? I'm like, wow, no, I mean, I never thought about it that way, but she's exactly right, because I see considerably less than I want to see on purpose, because I've kind of got the blinders on, but I still see, you know, a tremendous amount everywhere I go, and I sometimes wish I could just say, all right, you know, I don't want to see any more of this shit. You know, clearly I don't have to respond to it anymore, but I still see it going on. I'm like, oh God, you know.
Would you ignore it if you saw it in a store? If you saw a robbery in a store and you were armed, would you ignore it? Could you honestly say you're gonna just pump your gas and drive off when you see that guy with a shotgun in the girl's face?
You know. Well, Dave Grossman, he ruined it for me. He said, you know, if you guys that choose not to carry and you see something going on and you could have stopped it, he goes, can you live with that? I'm like, damn it, Dave, come on, man. I'm over the novelty of carrying a gun anymore. I live in California now, so it's a little more difficult anyway. You know? But still, it's like, God, you know, and he's exactly right, because you know we want to get in there and we want to try to stop it.
It's the warrior mindset. Grossman's the man.
Well, sometimes it's help for self as well too. You know, Sergeant Gregorio, you know, during the first broadcast, he was telling us about how, you know, he was on his way home and made a stop because of an accident, and he ran into another, you know, he's seeing the brass, and, you know, the guy's been on the force for, you know, quite some time. And, you know, Sergeant Gregorio was able to like kind of just tell by his mannerisms, the look on his face and things like that, that he wasn't all right. So we exchanged the information with him and things like that. And it's like, it's little things like that to where, you know, when we do make the decisions that, you know, even though it may not be on the clock, but it's a 24-hour gig, you know, to where, you know, always wanting to serve, as long as, you know, the individuals are doing it for the right reasons, you know. And Mike, you brought up a great point when you were talking about how, you know, today's, you know, culture of law enforcement, and especially with how I'm not going to say desperate, but, you know, a lot of agencies are so understaffed that they just want somebody that's willing to put on that uniform. But, you know, why is that person willing to put on that uniform? Is it for the right reasons and things like that, to where, you know, they're really not properly trained, as you know, we're covering and things like that. But even on top of that, you know, how many of us are ever taught how to deal with what we're going to be exposed to? I mean, it's next to none. And I know, hey, Chris, I actually see it now. I don't see warp speed going by in the Enterprise, but So, because I know, Mr. Zanito, Mike's a big advocate for the peer support groups as well too, and I know that you kind of run one, and you have a pretty good system as far as the peer support. How much difference do you think, or do you see that peer support is actually providing for fellow brothers and sisters in the department? I mean, is it making a difference? Are there more individuals willing to talk to the fellow peers?
Was that for me or for Chris?
For Chris.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. I actually think that it's not life changing, Michael. It's life saving. I was talking to one of my peers yesterday over some stuff, and not realizing he was struggling with some things, and he had said something on a call that we were on together, where we were doing aid on a guy who was badly shot and didn't survive, and it truly impacted him, and I didn't recognize it, and it's been almost 2 years now, and I'll keep the conversation private, but he said something to effect. He said something. I was like, okay, and why? And he's like, you know what, man? Fuck this. I'm not talking about this. I'm not fucking doing this right now. I was like, okay, that's cool, man. And I just said, you know what? It got me. Sometimes like I said earlier, very powerful words that our friend David Perez says, when you can tell somebody, me too. I said, I know. Me too, man. Sometimes I sit in my little freaking cubicle or my office or whatever, and sometimes I'll cry a little bit for no reason. Sometimes I think about things and I have a smell or whatever. Being able to tell him that, and that he wasn't by himself having this issue, processing, and coming to some kind of closure and resolving the trauma that we experienced together. And I'll tell you that we were in the exact same situation, dealing with the same guy, but processed that issue very differently. So, I think that it's very valuable when you can tell somebody, "Me too. I processed something," but I can't tell you how he processed it. Right? It's the same thing, but very differently. But that seemed to take him off edge a little bit when I said, "Hey, here's what I've got going on too." Right? And then it opened up the door for him to be able to talk. And by the end of the talk, and we only talked for about maybe 40 minutes, it was like he went from this grimacing posture, kind of locked in, like this fighting mode almost, when you get in that fight, we're going to bring it in, to being relaxed. And then afterwards, 20 pounds being lifted off of his shoulders. Peer support is a very critical thing, I think. One of my former SWAT buddies told me, he goes, I thought about that, but what do I really have to offer? And I feel the same thing. I don't have a damn thing to offer, except for that Me Too thing, and saying, hey, man, I'm kind of cracked too. And sometimes I don't think that we're solving any problems. We're not MHPs. We're not mental health providers, professionals. We're not counselors. Well, we're not professionals in that aspect, right? But we can listen to each other in this kind of room that we're in, talking amongst a bunch of brothers and sisters, that it keeps that air in that balloon, air out of the balloon, so it doesn't pop. So you keep the gun out of your hand, per se, the risky behaviors, the self-medicating, and might keep that stuff down to a manageable level, just to be able to vent this stuff out.
One of the things that you stated during my very first broadcast, where the three of us were on here, and but you stated about, because we were talking about the same thing about peer support and things like that, talking about a lot of people being ashamed about things, but being direct, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the whole Me Too aspect, to where you said that sometimes we just have to be blunt to be able to point it out to them so that they could recognize it, or make them at least think about it before, or think about it now. Just coming out and asking them, are you thinking about hurting yourself? Are you suicidal? A lot of us, we tend to kind of draw back because we may think that somebody's already vulnerable, that we, kind of tiptoe around and really don't want to be direct like that. But, without actually asking that question, seeing their mannerism, seeing their response, there's really no way to deal with that. And like I said, I've been thinking about, it's stuck with me since, you made that comment some months ago, and there's just reality in that, being blunt to someone, like, it's one thing to say, oh, hey, you okay? Yeah, I'm good. But hey, you thinking about hurting yourself? It's like, think about that. Well, actually, yeah, but it's strong. And especially when it comes to the peer support groups, because that Me Too stacked on top of that aspect of it, that's the only way that we're really going to be able to address and find some kind of resolve. I mean, a lot of times, like Christopher and I were just talking about sometimes we can't just forget, but, there are ways of actually dealing with it. And I know, Mike, I know you're a great big advocate on the PTSI rather than the disorder aspect of it, where it's just an injury, so that we can, talk it through and, work our ways over. So, I believe that kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Well, when we think that we're by ourselves, that's where that shame comes in, right? Because you think that you're by yourself and you're embarrassed by it. But when you recognize that it's not just you, that shame goes away. And there's two words for me that are very critical when people get close to a really bad place. And that's shame, and that's betrayal. And if we can minimize some of the shame that people feel, and for me, and we can talk another day about betrayal and what I think about that, you really, really kind of conflate some of that stuff and take some of that pressure off. I didn't mean to cut you off, Brother Mike. And I think I met you. You were at the Wounded Blue, right?
No, I was in Boston.
Okay. I thought I met you in the Wounded Blue in Las Vegas earlier this year.
with
Actually,
Amanda, right? Amanda,
actually, during your broadcast, Mike, Chris was actually on our broadcast where you were on there, and I thought you guys said that you guys seen each other in I don't know if it was Boston or Chicago, but I know that you guys,
it was Chicago.
You pinpointed
That's
when you guys
right.
seen each other.
It was Chicago.
That's what it was, Chicago, the HITS conference.
Chris,
Yep,
you said something that's real important, and I'm gonna tell you, and I'm gonna strongly encourage you to advocate for this. Is that you said I don't have any background, no mental health training, none of that kind of stuff, and I'm gonna tell you personally, I went to counseling, I went to therapy stuff for my military, for some of my police stuff and whatnot, and I tell you, I walked out of more therapy sessions because the offices looked really nice. There was a pretty girl sitting across from me on the desk, 25 years old, got a great wall. The couch looks nice and comfortable. But guess what? She'd never been a cop. She'd never been a nurse. She'd never been a medic. She'd never been a veteran. She had no idea. She just had a nice Cal State University, whatever, degree on her wall. And she wasn't going to help me. So relatable stuff, it's real critical. You could talk to firemen too. You're in that first responder window. You don't have to be a fireman to talk to somebody. But like you said, the mental health professionals, it doesn't take going to a 6-year, master's program to qualify to do that. Right. Just listening and letting them, and that Me Too thing, you hit the nail on the head. Save a Warrior, that they advocate for that Me Too. And it's not basically, you're not condescending, you're not talking down to the person, but you're validating the fact that you know what they're talking about. Instead of saying, I've been there and, I know how you feel. That's all the touchy-feely bullshit. Let's have a group hug,
right.
Kumbaya, all that stuff. No, you're acknowledging that you have those similar, whether it doesn't have to be the same exact incident. You don't have to be there the day that it happened. But you have a similar thing that's happened that you can identify why they feel as strong as they do. Like the guy that was all tensed up and all that kind of stuff. And then 40 minutes later, he's like ready. He probably cried. You guys probably hugged it out. All that kind of shit. He probably said, hey, fuck you. Don't tell anybody. Whatever it was.
Yep. We call that culturally competent. We don't need a PhD or whatever. You just got to be culturally competent.
Absolutely. And we talked about this last time that when we reminisced about Chicago. Old school ways, when you had a bad call, your sergeant would say, hey, meet me over here at so-and-so, walk and don't walk. Let's get a cup of coffee. We get over there and you say, oh, what's going on? Oh, well, I'm having a shitty day. I'm this and that. That really affected me, really pissed me off. The sergeant look at you and go, stop being a little bitch. Let's get back in the fight. That's how they handle stuff. Okay, you knock it down. And I have conversations with guys that retired, 10, 20 years ago. And they're like, that's how we handled stuff. And those guys are fucked up. They are messed up.
Well, that's like with Chris. I mean, to kind of go on what you're saying, Mike. I know Christopher was, he and I have had conversation after conversation, and to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, you and I had a real in-depth conversation about the difference between, the old school brotherhood opposed to what law enforcement is today. I know, one of the things that flares Christopher's mind up is the fact of how, like, our superiors and our brass today are sitting there because of test taking abilities. And it goes the same thing with these counselors that read a fucking book, but they've never been able to provide you with that me too. They haven't been out there in the field. They haven't actually ran that call, but they want to sit here and Officer Hoyer, what you should have done was you probably should have made the it's like, but they've never been in that situation. They've read a book or two and things like that to where, that same effect on the mental health side where you're trying to talk somebody down and being able to say me too, it's kind of hard for, an officer to be able to sit here and keep a straight face as their superiors trying to tell them how to do something when all they did was read a book and made a traffic stop.
who here can say they remember in the academy how to talk a machete out of someone's hand, and specifically a machete out of someone's hand, or someone standing up on the ledge of a bridge with a bunch of water down below? Can anybody?
Michael Segru's got a good story about that.
Can anybody say they have that training in the academy? No, right? Okay, but the first one you go to, I mean, we've had our mental health and our mental illness responding to that for officer safety standpoint, but talking that guy off the ledge. I mean, what do we generally do as humans when we do that kind of stuff? It's hard to sympathize and empathize and have that difference, right? So sometimes we'll personalize things and use personal experience, and other times we'll be like, go ahead and fucking jump. I mean, I worked with a guy. My second phase training officer told me, he says, if I ever get someone up on a bridge, he goes, I'm going to walk over there and go, dude, it's raining out here. You're going to jump, just get it over with. And he told me that flat out. I'm like, you can't do that, because what if he jumps?
Yeah. Now we're 10-8. So going back a little bit on that, I got lucky with mine. This is just another perspective. What I ended up with was a shrink, and she was really good for the most part. And basically 3 things that happened that made me want to stay with her, even though she had no experience whatsoever. She mostly dealt with veterans, law enforcement, first responder types. But the very first thing that she ever said to me in person was, very much like we started our show tonight, was, hey, can we dedicate all our sessions to Dave? And I was like, right away I started bawling. I'm like, oh my God. Next thing that she did was she just sat there and listened to what I had to say. Probably the first 4 or 5 sessions, she didn't give me any feedback at all. And I'm like, are you going to interject here? Are you going to freaking head trick me or not? And she's like, no, let's talk it all out and listen. And then the first thing that she did start asking me was, what do you think you need to do? What do you think you could have done better? And she started asking me so I could process it on my own without her telling me, well, this is what you should do. This is what I would do. This is what I've read about, what I've heard over here. She goes, what do you think you should do? And I'm like, how the fuck should I know? This is your job to tell me. No. But she did that little Jedi mind trick on me. And it was like, wow, this is actually, it made me think. It made me stop and take a step back and go, wow, okay, yeah, maybe it is from my responsibility to take this on board without being told what to do.
How relieved were you to get that stuff off your chest, though?
It was huge. Unfortunately for mine, it was multi-layered. Probably very much like you guys. I went, 18 years and never processed through all the bad stuff. And when it came back to back, by the time my last critical incident hit in my 18th year, I was too far gone to be recovered in a timely manner. But when I finally did, and then with this was Natalie, my girlfriend. She says the same thing all the time. She goes, that's what saved your life. And she's exactly right. So,
and it's saving others.
I'm hoping it does. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, back to what Chris was saying earlier, you got the guy and it's like, the muscle guy and he's ready to freaking pound your head into the wall. For me, what it took was somebody saying, you know what? Bullshit. You're not gonna leave this room. We're gonna sit you down in a chair and we're gonna fucking pound it out of you. Because I do like everybody else. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. No, you're not. Yeah, I'm fine. The hell you are, dude. No, you're not. And then finally, when it came to somebody recognizing that I was clearly not okay, they cornered me and they're like, Yeah, you're done. Grab a seat. Fuck, all right, now I've got to face it. Now I've got no choice. Damn it. All right, fine. And it was very difficult for me to do that. But again, I got really, really, really lucky. It happened to be somebody that I trusted to share my feelings and shit with. And then it just kind of, after that, it just all came out, And it wasn't, I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't in one session. And it wasn't just one person in one particular setting. It was several weeks and months of, doing whatever it was that they did for me that kind of pushed me back to where I needed to be. So,
well, that just solidifies what, again, what stuck with me, what Chris said about the just asking bluntly, just as she asked you, like, because when you think about it in your head and you start dwelling on that and start talking about that, it's going to be the fastest way to find or to start that road, rather to, sometimes we're not ever going to overcome some things, but at least we'll be able to cope and deal with, certain aspects of, what it is that we're going through.
Yeah.
Gents, I apologize. I love all of you, but I got to jump off here. Thank you so much, Michael. Mike, this is the Mike and Chris show, man. This is
That's kind of funny.
So amazing. Chris, thanks for again telling your story. I know you're saving lives and changing lives. Thank you for being so open and vulnerable about it. Mike, you too, brother. And I can't wait to do this again.
Yeah, so we got to get your little one-on-one, get your story.
Amen.
Stay
We'll make
blessed. All things, brother.
We'll make it happen. God bless, guys.
See you, bud. So
that dude is a rock star, man.
The other thing that Chris touched on is about the peer support is that, it's important to have peer support because there's a big difference between that and critical incident stress debriefing. The critical incident itself, you debrief it after that, gives a chance for everybody to kind of air their thoughts, their feelings and whatnot. The peer support is kind of the after effect before they go on to therapy and all that kind of stuff. So it's one of those things where you definitely want to make sure that you have a solid peer support group, not just somebody that wants to sign up for it because they want to go to the training and, put something on their resume. You need someone that's actually passionate about it, that really is going to give a shit about his brothers and sisters who are struggling, not just that guy who's going to,
Natalie's talking about you in this comment right here, Chris.
Dude, I'm always crying with her, man. You kidding me? Jeez. So, she's trying to hide, but I'm going to turn this thing around so you guys can see her. So whatever.
You dare.
But by going off what you're just saying right there, I mean, there's I just lost my train of thought where I was going to go with that. Oh, I was going to say, guys like us, we can see through those folks right away when we know they're not genuine, and they're there just to kind of collect a check, or they want to get out of answering radio calls for the day, so they go to critical incident briefings and stuff like that. And when you start, letting them, pick you apart, if you will, you can clearly see that they either have no interest, they don't have the heart for it, or whatever. And so I just say that didn't really happen very often, but every once in a while I'd find somebody that I clearly either didn't trust or knew that wasn't there for the right reason. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. And again, the critical incident, the debriefing after the fact, that usually needs to happen in the 24 to 72, 96 hours kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the follow-up after the fact, the peer support, that's kind of like, hey, just, checking in, just because you don't forget about it. Those CISDs, they are not judgmental at all. It's a chance for everybody involved, no supervision, no management, none of that kind of stuff. So there's no judgment, and nobody's worried about, the word getting out, because they're really confidential, that they're going to be monitored by someone who is going to be, basically not control the room, but kind of keep the room flowing and allowing people to talk and get their information out that's bugging them or what's, what they're struggling with.
Yeah.
Well, one of the key points that a lot of agencies aren't doing, or even like the individuals, and I know you and I had a big discussion about this before, Mike, is that follow-up. A lot of individuals don't realize how important that follow-up is, and not a scheduled follow-up, but me just, calling, hey, Christopher, I just wanted to just, give you a check real quick and just do a follow-up. rather than, hey, I'm going to give you a call on February 20th at 5:15. You know what I mean? It's like, that's not really a follow-up. It's like kind of scheduled where it's kind of, I'm not going to say programmed but you know what I mean? It's those follow-ups are critical, and especially on individuals that really do need it. Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to cut you off, Christopher. I'm sorry.
No, you're good, man. You're good. Of course, now I can't think of what I was going to say, but I've been doing that all day, so I'm not going to blame you for
notes.
that.
Take notes.
So, Natalie's asking if I'm going to read the chapter. I get the feeling she wants me to freaking wrap this thing up, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's almost midnight for me.
It's almost midnight for me. It's only like 8:15, but that's like 3 hours after my bedtime, man. So
10:15 for me in Texas.
Where are you at in Texas?
I'm in New Braunfels, just north of San Antonio, 20 minutes outside of San Antonio.
I still don't know where that is, but my Natalie's son, he's a deputy out in Johnson County, out that way. So
okay, that's up north. Where are you at?
I'm in San Diego. So
I won't judge you.
Yeah, so I think we're the only people in the world to move to California, but 65 degrees today. Sunsets. I mean, beach.
It was 70. It was 72 today. It was frozen, freezing last week, but
I was say, yeah, you guys got snow. Yeah, no. Oh wow. I'll take my 68 all day. So
it's America.
Our governor's trying to draw the Californians out here so they can live right.
Yeah, right.
Out here in Florida.
Jeez.
We're another part of America, Mike. We're like the second
exactly.
Texas.
Yeah. Now, where are you at again, Mike?
I'm down in Pompano Beach.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So DeSantis. Yeah. You guys are taking all the cops that are getting fired because of the unvax.
Oh yeah, we're taking everybody.
Yeah.
Well, first responders and everything. Like, there was a big thing about some of these hospitals, because of them being privately owned, or sending home some of the nurses and things like that spent the whole year dealing with COVID patients, but now all of a sudden it was like the vaccine and stuff like that. So they discharged it was a couple dozen of different nurses and things like that. It just got ridiculous. But anyway,
yeah,
it's
crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy times.
Chapter 12.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Chapter 12.
Luckily, this was kind of short. My computer keeps acting up, so hopefully it doesn't kick me out. But
if I see a lag in your reading, I'll go ahead and take off. Since Natalie didn't get to hear the Rico Suave, that could have been doing her audio book for.
I'm not gonna say it. I'm not even gonna finish that sentence. Never mind. So,
she right there getting ready to throw something at you.
Yeah, she's hiding out at the moment. But I was gonna say that actually helped me out last week. Thanks, man. So. All right, I got to put on my freaking reader cheaters here. So. All right, so obviously this is a pretty heavy chapter. It's pretty short, but this was my my very first experience with, just like the chapter says, burying a brother. So, all right, March 26, 1999 was a day I never thought could happen. Not this close to home. Believe me when I say nothing could prepare to hear those words. He is gone, guys. He's gone. Community was devastated. The department was crushed. A squad was ruined. Family was destroyed. It had been 8 years since the last equally devastating. Now there's a word that resonates, that describes that horror, the anguish, and the loss. I was off that day. Still being a newbie, I was assigned a third shift in a different precinct area. Immediately, the calls came in. Hey, man, you okay? Why? What happened? You're kidding. What? Bullshit. Over time, I came to despise those calls. After confirming that I was okay, there was always a follow-up question. What happened, and do you have any details? It was an introduction to evil. I realized I was facing an enemy that made me question my decision to work in law enforcement. Who on earth has the capacity to kill a cop? It's like signing your own death warrant, right? We will catch you. You will die for your actions. But does evil even care? I could not wrap my head around what had happened. I was not so naive to believe that we as officers don't get killed, but cold-blooded murder? I never accepted just how evil itself could be. Once with emotions over the next few days trying to process and rethink my own street-level strategy, as limited as it was with just 1 year on. I did not have any idea how to deal with this newfound and profound loss. It did not take long, though. Naturally, I went to the funeral and had every intention of standing proudly beside my brothers and sisters to show my respect and support, even though I felt completely useless among the sea of blue. There were almost as many tan uniforms, not to mention a huge number of ordinary citizens showing their love and support. The chaplain spoke, then the minister, and then a handful of friends. It was a blur then, and even more so now. But I won't ever forget when they played a fallen officer's favorite Van Halen song over the church loudspeakers. I burst into tears and wept for a good 10 minutes. Why am I crying? I never met this man, this peer, this officer. Oh my God. It suddenly hit me like a ton of bricks. I am part of something extraordinary and meaningful. Looking around the room confirmed it. This was not just a career. It's a lifestyle, a calling, and a brotherhood that reaches beyond the limits of anything I have ever been exposed to. I was suddenly filled with pride. I knew what I had accomplished and what it took to get there. But then I saw a whole new truth. As a member of this extraordinary brotherhood, this man laid down his life for his beliefs as an officer, for his friends, and for a community left mourning. What could be more honorable than that? After that first funeral, I stood a little taller, my shoulders pulled back, and my chest opened. There was a new confidence in me. It made me look at my world differently, and I will forever because of that day. Thank you, my brother. So, yeah, my reading is horrible. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm out of control today, but yeah, that was Mark Atkinson. I think he had 6 or 7 years on at the time, give or take, something like that. And just a really bad situation. He was very much like me, just a go-getter type guy, and got ambushed and shot and killed. And it was shocking to everybody, because it hadn't happened in my area in like the last 8 years. It was really unexpected that nobody saw it coming. So it really affected the department really, really huge, because we had a really big push back then, back between like 95 and 98 when I was going through. Phoenix had a huge push of hiring guys left and right. So when this happened, we had a shit ton of new guys, including myself, that we didn't know what to do about this. We never knew what to expect. So we didn't really know how to handle it as a community of officers, because a lot of the guys that were now the senior guys hadn't gone through this in years and years. So they were kind of caught off guard as well. So, but anyway, so that's Mark's story right there. So,
and then I know you never met the guy, but I mean, were you close to any of the squad or anything else like that was like direct with him?
No, at the time, no. I knew one of his coworkers was on his squad at the time. She became my sergeant. About a year or so later, she got promoted. I think she was already promoted. Let me back that up. They were on squad together. She got promoted. She went on someplace else, and then about a year after that happened, I ended up working for her. And they were really, like almost back to back in serial number.
Mark Todd Atkinson?
Yeah, that's him. Yeah.
326.99?
Yeah, that's the one. Yep. So
the Phoenix PD site has the in memoriam.
They do, yeah.
Dave's on there as well too. But I mean, it's pretty nice how they do like the little YouTube videos for the in memory of and things like that as well. So
yeah, I obviously the presentation that I do, I talk about that and I can't even compare notes, and I don't even want to know, but how many other agencies have gone through as many tragedies as we have, and it was, in my 20 years on, it was 16 plus 3 since I retired. I mean, that for me, that's unheard of. I can't even imagine anybody else going through the same amount. I remember Dallas, right around the same time Dave was killed, and they lost their 5 in that one sitting. Was just, unbelievable. It's like, holy shit, man, how can this happen? So.
And it is like unbelievable, like you said. It's like, hey, does this really? I mean, who does that? It's because you figure the respect of the authority and things like that there really wouldn't be that evil in the world. So it does kind of bring it to light and put that other perspective on there. That okay, I know I signed up for this, but okay, hey, I signed up for this. Yeah.
Well, I tell you, it definitely puts some different perspective on my well-being, my spirituality. Everything that kind of comes with this sort of situation. And even though I was a little bit older in age, I was still really naive in the ways of the world as far as this kind of stuff goes. And, I mean, I wasn't kidding when I said that, I took a tremendous amount of pride in being part of that community after this thing happened. I mean, I had already experienced quite a bit in life, and until something like this happened, as tall as I was standing prior to this happening, when that happened, man, I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm really going to make a big impact on how I act and how I am in my own personal life and my professional life at that point, so, and that never went away. So,
well, I mean, it's reflected in, the book and the things that you do, and, what you're wanting to do as far as, going in and training the, brothers and sisters in the different agencies and things like that, of like what to look for, because, regardless of watching movies or whatever you see, and like dead bodies everywhere, there's not a fucking film that you can watch that is going to bring the realization when you're physically looking at someone and just seeing the like light from their eyes dissipate and just be completely gone. It's a whole different aspect, and you could watch 100 murder series episodes and things like that back to back, but there's not one episode that's gonna like bring that realization as far as the here and now, and this is what it's like when somebody's light is gone. So
yeah. So, and I mean, you mentioned the word pallbearer earlier today, and when you experience one of these things in real life, whether you knew the guy or you didn't know the guy, or I mean, this is how naive I was. I didn't even realize that there was like an after effect for the burial part after the funeral. I went home, which is good. I mean, kind of by design. I had no choice. I had to go home anyways, but and I'm so glad that I did, because when they played the last call, I was like, oh yeah, I still to this day, no matter where it is, I can't watch it on TV. I can't hear it. I mean, I'd freaking lose it. So I'm kind of glad that I never had to experience that particular day, because I think that maybe would have changed me as well. But when you experience something like that, it really puts a broader stroke on everything that we're here for, what we're representing, so.
absolutely. And hey, Mike, so in your years, I mean, because I'm sure that you've had the instances to where someone was dead on scene, but was it the first ones that affected you, or was there one like later? Were there any instances that, and I don't mean to pry like this and kind of bring this up, but just kind of like targeting certain things like this so that others alike kind of like the Me Too aspect of it, but was it because it's not something that you adapt to? And I mean, even in your career, I'm sure that you've had multiple instances to where individuals were dying, whether it be in your arms or seeing it happen. But was there any impact? Was it the first? Because it's not something you really get used to. I mean, do you know where I'm going with this, as far as, or was it something like later on that kind of like left that impact? Or
Yeah, I mean, I remember my very first one, first death I've seen where someone's actually died right like in front of me. And I remember my last one, and I remember them like they were yesterday because of what I'm doing today. I mean, I talk about them all the time, but as far as them affecting me, the first one probably did not really affect me as much as you would think it would. Where today, if someone, like I use the military, for example, you're 18 years old, you're a young kid, you're still a teenager, and they send you off to combat, and you see people getting blown up and all that kind of stuff. Can you really prepare for that? No. You go to boot camp, you learn how to, use your weapon and all that kind of stuff, but they don't prepare you for all that other stuff. But some guys, it's like it's one of those things where you kind of just let that stuff happen, and you remember and you feel like, hey, I gotta stay in the fight, otherwise something's gonna happen to me. And then when all the adrenaline wears off, you're kind of like think back and go, wow, that was pretty hairy. I was in the shit kind of thing. And then it either affects you, or you kind of just let it go away, or let it go dormant, if you will. and then go back to it when everything's all said and done. You go home or whatever.
Were there any moments or instances where it wasn't necessarily the individual that was dying there that impacted you, but rather the expressions or the effects that that death played on, individuals standing around or anything like that? Did you ever? I mean, was there ever any impact that you sustained or that kind of like, left its mark on, your memory, kind of how you just remember the first and the last, like it was yesterday, but the expressions of those around and how they took, the death that, obviously that, you were there a witness of.
The first one that got me was the family's reaction. And it was a young kid, and the family's reaction, they just couldn't believe it. And when it finally even sunk in, if you will, it was one of those things where their reaction was, it was like you see in the movies. They buckled down, they hit the ground and went down to their knees and screamed and hollered. And I mean, I got slapped by the mom. It was like, it was just her reaction. It was just one of those things. And it was like, okay, I mean, and then you start second guessing yourself, if I would have done it this way, or if I would have got here quicker, or, would this be, or, but you play all those things in your head. But then the last one was more personal because it was a child, and I had a child that was similar age, very similar age, and it affected me in a way that I was like, at one point I thought I saw my kid's face there, and that was working as a medic. That wasn't even as a cop. That was as a medic, and it just affected me in a weird, in a personal way.
I mean, I remember that conversation because you and I kind of touched on that during our broadcast, but it's one of them things though too, because the personalization that we assert ourselves to when situations are happening, kind of like, well, hey, I have a kid too, and especially when it's the same age and things like that, to where seeing families' reaction, a lot of times they always say like the psychology behind things, to where like infantrymen on the front line, they can run straight at, bullets flying everywhere and bombs, because they don't associate death to them. They're thinking about the poor bastard next to them, and it's the same sense, to where that's why I wanted to ask this question. If, other people's reactions, kind of stuck with you more or impacted you more than the actual death that, you were responding to, or, the incident that occurred.
Yeah, I worked with a guy, God, almost 30 years ago. I was in the military, and we were running a call, and I was working with this young guy at the time. We were both in our, he was just barely 20, I think, if I remember right. I was in my early mid-20s, and we were working in San Diego, out that way, for Hartford Ambulance. And I was working, it was an off-duty, I was in the Navy at the time, but it was an off-duty job that I was working. And we were running a call, and this kid that I was riding with me, brand new medic, he was number one in his class. He's basically this superhuman kid. I'm never going to lose a patient. Nobody's going to die on my watch, kind of thing. And the third call we had on that shift, someone died, and he was the medic for that. And he literally went back to the station, turned in his badge, and went home. He quit that moment as soon as we got back. And it hit him so hard that it was just like, this isn't for me. It was like the reality set in that, like, that really is going to happen. And he had that mindset that it was never going to happen on his thing. But again, he's human, and it had to be, he had to lose that patient in order to realize that, yeah, this shit really, this is real life. It does happen, because you're not going to save everybody. You're not going to, I mean, I still say this today. I'm not going to, that's why I don't do the, go get my PhD and go be a counselor, because I can talk to 6 or 8 people a day, for an hour each time. But I'm gonna go out, and I'm gonna educate, and I'm gonna advocate and talk to the masses, so I can get the word out.
Okay, we're out of time.
It is. Yeah, what's that?
That was it. I was saying about the counselors, like the hours a day. Oh, hold on. Okay, Mike, we're out of time. We'll pick this up next time.
Exactly. So yeah, write about it. And we'll see you next month or next week or whatever. But like so when you go out and you talk and you tell people your story and you tell them that it's okay to not be okay, and the reality is that we're still human. Yeah, we put our pants on like the next guy that we work with, but we all deal with trauma. We all deal with catastrophe different ways. And it doesn't mean that we're broken. That's why I said at the last time we talked, it's not PTSD. It's not D. It's not a disorder, because the mindset of that is that you're messed up and you're never going to get fixed. You're broken. You're not broken. You have an injury or you have an illness. You have something going on in your mind that's saying that something's not right. But it's how you process that and how you deal with that and how you find that way, whether it's through therapy, counseling, whatever your method is, journaling, meditation, to find that way, find out what it is that's misfiring or not working, and work through that. And then guess what? You're cured. It's like when you get an ear infection when you're a kid, doctor gives you a prescription, you take your medication, and the infection goes away. Guess what? No more ear infection. But if you have a disorder, what's disorder by definition? It's a bad word.
That's why what Christopher does as far as the actually having the shock value, kind of going back into especially in that field where that's all you're seeing is people on their deathbed, literally, to where it takes a special kind of individual to be able to, walk in and actually do that as well too. Yeah. And that's why, more of what Chris does, because, again, like you said, when you first came on here about, going through the academy, how many of us are taught how to process what the fuck we're going to experience, right. Zero, and it's just the same thing with your profession and things like that. And that's why I'm a big advocate for what Christopher does. And I love what you do and things like that, as far as the, being open about that.
Yeah. We've looked at, and like I said, I just moved to Texas from Southern California, and my organization is associated with Restored Heroes, and in California, we got post-certified for critical incident stress debriefing, and we've tried to work on a method to get the training, mental health training, preparation for officers and fire personnel in the academies. The problem is that the state's got such a regulation of how many hours you need for each subject matter. So, for us to say, oh, we need 5 hours, or we need 3 hours, or we need even 6 hours. I mean, 1 hour would be beneficial to talk about this kind of stuff in a room full of these new hot dog kids that want to become cops, but there's zero preparation for it. So you kind of just have to get thrown to the wolves. And I talked about this in the last podcast we did, is that if you think about where people who are coming out of the military, what are they doing when they get out of the service? They're going into public service. They're going into police work. They're going into EMS. They're going into, get their nursing license and go work in hospitals. But they're taking all that PTSI, all that trauma that they've suffered during their military service, and they're not lying about it, but they're basically not bragging about it and not putting it on the forefront because they want to get that job to go be a fireman or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then that one little trigger incident sets it off, and all of a sudden they're broken or they're damaged and they're hurt again, and they now they're suffering from their trauma that happened before they were even cops. It's kind of an ugly cycle, but it's police work historically for police work, they're reactionary. They don't really change policies until something happens. They don't make rules and SOPs or policies and procedures unless they've got an example of something that happened. You can't just pull that stuff out of your hat and go, oh, we're just going to write it down on paper. Here we go, as a policy for it. No, something happened that made them write that policy the way it is. And mental health is one of those things where, and especially in California, before I moved, Florida was really advocating to push to get PTSI or PTSD at the time, to get it on the books for workman's comp. The problem with that is now, and they look at it, and I'm not going to get political, but now if the state says it's workman's comp, they now own it, and they now are going to make it a presumptive thing. Back injuries are presumptive for police officers and firefighters. Knee injuries, high blood pressure, all those things. But guess what? All of those things can be related to trauma too.
Yeah, and on the VA's website, you can actually do psychological first aid. And it's just like things where you can actually be, when there's a natural disaster or something like that happens, you're going to respond like Hurricane Katrina. There were so many individuals that, it's a big course, about 500 pages to go through, but, it's the psychological first aid, kind of finding out, what the needs are, what they consider loss, what was really lost. Was it the house or was it the emotional aspect of it and things like that to walk individuals through? And it's the kind of what you were saying before. And I know Christopher's touched on this before to where, when it's something that you can add that me too with, it enhances everything else as well too. You don't have to have a college degree, to do anything. But if you check it out sometime, it's on the VA website. Just go on there and just look up the psychological first aid. It's got some pretty good stuff on there. And a lot of it should be used in a lot of different peer groups because, you just
FEMA's got a hyperlink for that as well. That's relatable to the VA stuff for all that other natural disasters.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to use in the peer groups because, like you just said about the, many of us that leave, military join, public service. So much of it is so relevant to where, deciphering that and getting people to talk about it. Like Christopher said, he didn't know how to take her at first, but when she just came out and was just direct, like, hey, the fuck's going on?
Well, I mean, clearly there's the guys that get out of the military, they want to have that, that first responder, daily adrenaline dump and all this kind of stuff because we're action figure types, we're meat eater, A-type personalities. We want that kind of a thing. We want that life-saving ability or whatever happens to be, whatever your role is. Something that I started saying to myself when I started realizing how screwed up I was, and I don't mind saying it because I was. In fact, I mean, what I tell people is you can't go through the shit that I went through and not expect to be fucked up. You're going to be screwed up. Just the way it is. Mm-hmm. But I started realizing that's like, man, I want to be better, or do you want to be like, I've got one of my closest friends. I love the guy like a brother. I mean, I take a bullet for him right this very second, but he introduces himself as, hey, I'm Mike. I got PTSD. Okay. So are you using that as a badge of honor kind of a thing, a badge of courage? You're hiding behind it. I mean, do you want to get better or do you want to continue on the way you're going? And I don't judge him for it one bit. I mean, I don't. I have these long conversations with him about whatever he's got going on. And he just hasn't crossed that threshold yet to where he wants to start realizing that, hey, this is not healthy anymore. I need to start progressing forward, And he's gotten better, don't get me wrong, but he's just one of those guys that, and I hate saying this statement, but it's one of those things that you guys will understand this. And this is one of the things that I advocated for my agency was, well, this is how we've always done it.
Yeah.
Okay, and that drives me fucking crazy when I hear that. And that's kind of his mentality because he's an old school guy. He's a SWAT sniper. He's a Marine Corps guy, all this kind of stuff. And that's what he's been bred into. That's how we've always done it. So I guess I just got to take it on board.
There's a blueprint.
You don't.
It's just like today, you still hear this 22 a day, 22 veterans a day kill themselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. First of all, who's the administrator that came up with that number?
Yeah.
And why do we give a shit if it's 22? We should care that it's more than zero.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, don't get dead set on that 22 a day. I'll tell you, during COVID, we were reporting first responder deaths and suicides for first responders and police officers and specifically firefighters. How many nurses and doctors did we talk about? Just last year with the whole vaccine thing, and I'm not getting political, but all these nurses and doctors that were heroes in 2020, and now they're, I'm not
jobs in jeopardy. It's fucking crazy.
They're losing their jobs. Okay, they're losing their livelihood, and talk a little bit about their suffering in that. No, nurses don't go to nursing school to go and not have the resources to take care of their patients.
Mhm.
They don't go to nursing school and go to work for 12 or 16 hours and then go in there and watch someone die by themselves because their family can't get in because of COVID. You know,
Right.
they're not trained for that. So for them to get thrown into that, and then we forget about them. I mean, I personally just started tracking some of that stuff, and we're at over 100 and I think it's 167 as of this last Monday. First of essential workers, nurses and doctors that have killed themselves nationwide.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's insane.
And that's insane. And I think the police officers, I think it's 11 or 12 right now since January 1st.
Well, kind of going on like
with Orange County in California.
Yeah, what Christopher was saying about like how people be like, well, I got PTSD. You hear so many people saying that, but the greater percentage of individuals that actually have PTSI don't even know they fucking have it.
Right.
A lot of the people that are self-diagnosing and just, I had my brains beaten as a kid. I got a noose wrapped around my throat from my father, and it's just like, it'd be so easy for me to say, oh yeah, I got PTSD because of that. It's like a lot of us self-diagnose because we can pull, one tragedy, out of the air and say, oh yeah, hey, I'm still experiencing, I'm scarred from this. But the realistic side of it is that, a lot of times if we can, decipher, where those actual traumas first occurred to where we can start healing, as you said, Mike, to where, it isn't a fucking disorder. It's hey, I got these scars, I can learn to provide the proper treatment to it.
Dig scars. Chicks dig scars. No, but like, and you brought up a point, Save a Warrior, their program, they delve into childhood trauma, and they get pretty deep into it, and it's a very, very successful program. They're doing some good stuff for veterans and first responders. Recently, they've opened it up to first responders, but a lot of that stuff is like the whole cliche. It starts in the home. I was raised in a house where if you said something derogatory to your parents, you got smacked upside the head.
Yeah.
You got, punched in the mouth sometimes. I'm not condoning it. This is discipline. This is abuse. Mm-hmm. And I used to tell people that when I was a cop, when I go to people's houses and I say, look, you left a mark, but did you do it this way or did you do it this way? And it's one of those kind of things where, if the kid smarts off, he gets popped or whatever. But today, they're calling the police and, reporting it as a crime.
What happened? He yelled at me.
Exactly.
Put your pockets on. Go take your stress time out. Give me a break.
There you go. It's time to sit down for timeout and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, whatever.
But and even now with COVID, COVID throws a wrench in all this stuff we're talking about. All of it. Mm-hmm. We got a whole new wave of PTS coming out with these kids that aren't allowed to go to school, aren't allowed to interact with their friends, and aren't allowed, they aren't allowed to have their lifestyle that they're used to. And that's a whole other wave we're going to have that I'm probably going to be dead and gone by the time they realize that it's a problem. But they need to identify it today.
Well, even on top of that, though, because it's bad enough that all these fucking I'm sorry about the language, but it's bad enough that all these restrictions are put on because of the COVID. But now, while we're in crisis, they're creating other crises too on teaching kids things that shouldn't be taught in schools. Trying to convince them of certain aspects that it shouldn't be there. So it's they're using a crippling time to cripple even more. Right. Everybody's like looking for the escape outs and things like that. And they take one problem because they're screwed up and pass it on to the next individual. And it's just, that's where that revolving cycle, really sets in. And just, I don't know, I could go on for days about this.
But how many of you guys familiar with the show Adam 12, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So watching episodes of Adam 12, you look back and you see how, they used to, we used to prank each other. Woods was the blonde guy, the pretty boy blonde surfer guy that was always, making the jokes and always doing pranks and all that kind of stuff. And finally, they'd just get tired of it and they'd call him, pull him aside and say, hey, stop being an asshole, Whereas today it's like everybody gets so sensitive and it's a whole different, different mindset of, sensitivity it's one of those kind of things where I'm like I said, I'm old school. You can't be sensitive and be a cop. It's just there's no place for it, because if it's sensitive, that's how people get hurt, and that's how bad things happen to officers and that. But it's one of those things where we're still human, and we're still gonna take things wrong, and we're still gonna take things personal and still get upset about stuff. But like with the trauma we were talking about the first and last death, it's one of those things where you could line 5 guys up and send them all to the same call, and each one of those guys is going to react to that call a different way
and report it 5 different ways.
Yeah, 5 different ways, or they're going to have 5 different ways of how they would handle that call. Because it's 5 different people. But guess what? It's 5 different humans. It's 5 different humans. Some guys are going to go. They're going to take their uniform off. They're going to go to the bar and drink for 4 or 5 hours. Then they're going to go home, and scream at their kids, yell at their wife, whatever, or go to their girlfriend's house, or whatever their coping mechanism is. And then the other ones are just going to go home and go to sleep and hunker down and not talk about their day. I personally never went home and told my family about my day. I got asked all the time, but I never shared it, because some of the things that I saw, I didn't think that I even wanted my worst enemy to see those things and have to experience those things. So I kept them inside just to protect them.
Yeah, that's the huge way it was back in our day. I mean, I got hired on in '97. That's what I was told. Do this, do this, do this, and then unfortunately for me, and I've seen this happen 100 times now that I know what it looks like. Well, you're not sharing it with me. You must be sharing it with her or somebody else. And then
right,
it's like, well, no, it's not that. But no, by that time it's too late. They don't believe you.
Yeah, like, your support system doesn't understand, because they're not there.
Right. Well, that's like a lot of the brothers would actually take their wedding bands off going out into the field, because it's like the personalization of is a lot of time suspects can actually kind of use it against you and things like that. So a lot of times it's that, and all of a sudden you go back home and you forgot to slip it back on before you walked into the door, and it's all of a sudden Christopher, you fucking running around, you sharing it with where the fuck's that wedding man at? Right. Yeah, man. But so Mike, when we gonna set one up again?
Well, you know what I think we need to do? I think we need to do some in-person one.
Yes, I was thinking about going live March 11th and 10th and 11th. I'm trying to get. I might send him and Natalie some tickets for that symposium, the first responder symposium. March 10th and 11th.
We might be in Phoenix. They're doing a retirees picnic and book signing out there.
I don't care. I'm sending you tickets, and I expect you to be there.
Where's it at?
It's in Chicago.
Is it really? Yeah.
March 10th and 11th.
10th and 11th. Let's see.
It's the first responder symposium, because it used to be strictly for firefighters. And this is the first year that they actually expanded it out to law enforcement and all the first responders. I know Michael Segru is going to be out there speaking. Adam Davis is going to be out there. And quite a few. They got a pretty good ticket going as far as individuals actually speaking.
Have you had a chance to look at that YouTube movie they just did?
Which one? Michael?
Mike
Segru? Oh, yes.
You get a chance to look at that?
Oh, yeah. I shared that everywhere.
Okay. Good deal.
That's what it was like. That's why I brought him up earlier when we were talking about the machete. Like a lot of people that know his story. I mean, he did some courageous things that a lot wouldn't do because of lashback that happened and things like that. But
I mean, the only thing I can think of right now is the 21-foot rule as far as the machete. The knife thing. That's the only type of training I would even think about. But now.
They did away with the 21-foot rule now.
but now they're saying, why can't you just shoot him in the leg? He wasn't gonna, he was way far away from you. Shoot him in the leg.
That'll work.
He's still gonna keep coming. It's
how much of firearm training were you ever taught to shoot anything other than torso?
Right. Yeah. Well,
never. I mean, it's not unless you just do it on your own. Like Christopher probably is one of the most self-trained individuals that actually spent time, and I don't understand why officers don't do that. Look at a prison yard. Them motherfuckers, they're working out every day preparing themselves for it. It blows my mind that law enforcement officers don't prepare themselves, and whether it's tactical or whether it's like physically fit and things like that as well too. It just blows my fucking mind.
Well, yeah,
I'll
they called it the Mozambique, the failure drill,
So,
2 to the chest, 1 to the head, and when I got hired, they were just transitioning, basically saying Mozambique is not okay. I can't say that. I got to call it the failure drill. Well, you remember that shooting in Florida, where the cop was killed because of that guy. Remember that scenario that I think was in the 80s?
if he would have done, yeah.
Yeah, and and all that, and it happened with that officer that got killed, and they called that the Mozambique is what it was back then. But it was, yeah, it's crazy. But that March 10th and 11th, that's in Chicago, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm open.
First Responder Symposium, Chicago, Illinois, March 10th and 11th.
Okay, I'm open. I could bring my.
It's
dog.
the 2022 First Responder Mental Health Symposium. It's the DoubleTree.
Is it First Responders First? Is that group?
It's the
Is it First Responders First? Those guys. Okay. Yeah. Send me that.
I'll send you the link over. Because because it's only $175 for the whole symposium, and you can get like the 115 for, like if you just want to go like one day. But the DoubleTree up there in Chicago, there's a good bar down there, the old school, like old Chicago style bars down there. Some good food. We'll go have.
Is it in downtown Chicago?
Ish.
Okay. Because I'm bringing my dog too.
Oh, Luke.
Cool.
Okay.
Well, hey guys, I'm gonna wrap it up. I got a range the next 2 days. Very very exciting. So
TV filled in, man. Make some videos.
I'll try if I can drag Natalie down there with me. She'll do it for me. So
you got some, because that's one of them stores too that we got to go onto your website, man. Training videos.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Seriously, I got all kinds of video equipment. I'll mail you guys.
All right. Well, fly on out here and do it for me, man. Come on. What are you waiting for?
I'll do that. I'm being serious.
All right.
We'll give you a chat about that.
You can,
I like driving though.
That's all right too. I'm good at that. So.
I made it from Pompano Beach to Buffalo, New York in 17 hours.
Nice.
Hey Chris, I just sent you a message with my number on there.
Oh, cool. Right on.
Text me your contact info, and send me your physical address too. We'll send you a care package.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Where's your flag, Mike?
And I received that. It's at my house. I'm in my office right now.
What the heck?
Oh, it was nice. Well, actually, state trooper was on 24 years and he was shot, so he was disabled. I actually gave him the challenge coin that you had.
Oh, you did?
Not the Facebook one that I love, by the way. But no, I mean, this is like the neck scarf and everything else. I mean, I can't appreciate any more, brother. Like what you sent to me and everything else too. Seriously,
no problem.
It's a blessing. And then we gotta
make a coin for you.
And then we gotta Natalie's book. We gotta get you Natalie's book as well too.
Yeah, for sure. She just resubmitted it again for like the 17th time. So.
Oh, geez.
Well, it was a pleasure, you guys, and thank you for everything you guys have done in the past and continue to do. And Christopher, I want to get your site up so we can actually start getting these training courses and things like that developed and stuff. So that's what I'll do is I'll just fly out there and we'll spend a weekend or something like that, kind of brain picking, because I got all kinds of different federal programs that I've rewritten to kind of tweak it and things like that. That way it qualifies for grants and all that other good shit. But
man,
we'll put some time. Mike,
hey, real quick, I need a grant writer. I need a grant writer, and I need someone that knows how to write grants.
Well, I've done so many different RFPs because I mean my nonprofit started back in 2007. So
yeah, I didn't tell you we have 110 acres in Granger, Texas, and we're building a equine therapy and service dog retreat for first responders and their families to come out.
Awesome.
And we need a grant writer to get that stuff going.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely get with you because if you go to because you can go on the Texas's government website and you'll see different RFPs, like contracts and stuff like that are out there, and different bids. You go to grants.gov, you'll see open things like have the award ceilings and things like that based on that. And if you go to michaelbagby.org and you go to the veterans page, you're going to see this veteran project that's going up in West Palm, to where it's going to be like a housing facility, have different acreage and things like that for sports fields, different picnic areas and things like that, different training facilities, and have living quarters and things like that. Its own hospital on site and everything else too.
And where's that at? That's in Florida?
It's in West Palm. If you go to michaelbagby.org and go to the veterans page, you'll see the whole program mapped out, working with Help Americans Inc.
Okay.
But
all right, guys, I'm gonna call.
Pleasure, brothers. Yes, sir.
Right
You
on.
guys and we'll get you scheduled again, and you guys stay safe, stay blessed in all things.
All right, man. Good night,
Thanks,
Facebook.